Pandemics, economic recession, famine, and war. If you turn on and watch the news, particularly world news, the idea that the world may be coming to an end would not be far from your mind. Then again, that's what the news has been implicitly inciting as an idea for decades. Sometimes, and only sometimes, however, the idea that the news might be right about making it seem as though the world is coming to an end was not incorrect either. Humanity, on several key moments in modern history, has found itself on the brink of annihilation. So, how do we really know if the world is coming to an end or not? Well, you see, there is a dedicated and official group of scientists and experts from a diverse array of fields that come together to measure just how far we are from the end. They measure humanity's distance from total environmental and geopolitical annihilation. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists is an organization comprised of scientists and experts in nuclear physics, energy, climatology, virology, economics, international relations, geopolitics, and even more fields. Formally, they're a think tank that provides advice to policymakers. But, more interestingly, since 1947, they have devised a type of barometer for how close humanity is to annihilation called the Doomsday Clock. By measuring how many minutes we are from midnight, the minute and hour hands on the clock tell us exactly how far we are from the end of the world. The minutes or seconds to midnight, with midnight being the end of the world, is determined by a set of factors that the board of scientists take into consideration, namely nuclear threats, biosecurity, climate change, bioterrorism, cyber warfare, the use of AI, and climate change. After assessing the threat levels of each factor, the board makes a conclusive, aggregate assessment of exactly how far they approximate we are from the end of the world. The closest the doomsday clock has been to midnight, i.e., the closest humanity has been towards its end, according to the Atomic Bulletin Board, has been in 1953, 1984, 2015, and 2020, with 2020 so far being the record closest that the doomsday clock has been to midnight. Yes, the year 2020 has been the year that the Atomic Bulletin Board estimated humanity as being 100 seconds from midnight. To give you a light intuition as to how the board determines humanity's distance from the apocalypse, I'll elaborate on the record years where humanity has been closest to midnight and the record year where humanity has been furthest from midnight. In 1952, the United States tested a thermonuclear device for the first time. Though it already used and tested first-generation nuclear bombs, this particular bomb was the first of its kind. What the thermonuclear or second generation of atom bombs were essentially capable of was the delivery of exponentially higher kilotons of explosive force or blast yield. To clarify by comparison, the first generation bomb named Little Boy, which was detonated over Hiroshima during World War II, had a blast yield of about 15 kilotons. The newly designed bomb tested in Operation Ivy in 1953 by the United States, named King, had a blast yield almost 700 times higher at 10.4 megatons, or 10,400 kilotons. In the same year, the Soviet Union tested its own atom bomb that delivered a blast yield of 400 kilotons. That's why the doomsday clock was set to 2 minutes to midnight in 1953. For 1984, several developments were occurring simultaneously. Since 1981, China began testing nuclear weapons. Martial law had been declared in Poland, a war between Iran and Iraq was ensuing, and human rights abuses and crises were occurring across the world. The Cold War at this point was accelerating as the US and the Soviet Union began deploying more intermediate-range nuclear devices pointed at each other's spheres of influence, with the United States deploying medium-range ballistic missiles in Western Europe and the Soviet Union boycotting the 1984 Olympics that was supposed to be hosted by the United States in Los Angeles. The Cold War had reached a fever pitch. The doomsday clock was set to 2 minutes to midnight, the closest humanity has been to its destruction since 1953. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved and the Cold War came to an end. With the absence of a nuclear power to strategically rival the United States, any imminence of global nuclear conflict disappeared for the time being and inspired confidence in the Atomic Bulletin Board's regard for the safety of human civilization. The doomsday clock was set to the furthest it has ever been from midnight, 17 minutes. Unfortunately, this record would not again be reached. According to the board, 1991 to 1994 was objectively the safest that humanity has been from total collapse in modern history. Since 1994 up to 2020, unfortunately, the doomsday clock grew more pessimistic. With a combination of worsening climate change, an overall increase in geopolitical tensions between the USA, China, Iran, North Korea, India, and Pakistan, coupled with nuclear modernization as well as the end of important treaties such as the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, The Atomic Bulletin Board of Scientists placed the doomsday clock at 100 seconds to midnight. 2020 so far has been the year that brought humanity closest to its end, according to the think tank. Should the doomsday clock reach midnight, there would no longer be any humans alive to announce it. Our proximity to the end of the world, as posited by the clock, which has been set by a panel of esteemed scientists, paints a rather bleak picture of humanity's current situation. However, there may indeed be reasons for hope. Human Progress, an organization dedicated to tracking the otherwise boring, unreportable in the media, incremental progress that our civilization has made so far, leaves room for cautious optimism against the doomsday clock's grim depiction. The organization is dedicated to tracking metrics such as infant mortality, income per person, the democratic status of any given nation, etc. The point is to mark and report any improvements that humanity has objectively made over the course of several decades, as data allows. You can find the links on the Doubt Fusion blog or simply search for Human Progress online and see exactly which metrics it tracks. Unfortunately, improvements in the conditions of people's lives around the world do not magically wipe away geopolitical tensions between nuclear-armed states. These are exceptionally complex issues to assess, and at your request, I'd gladly elaborate on some of them. But I'm going to leave the discussion here, because at least now you know that there is a more objective gauge of how close our world is to the end. The Doomsday Clock by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video and the discussion it entailed. If you want to see more content like this, make sure that you're subscribed to Doubt Fusion. Leave a like and it would be wonderful to hear your thoughts in the comments down below.